Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for checking in on me over the last few days. I'm happy to report that my Chanel lambskin classic flap is doing just fine. So if you missed my previous videos on the cleaning process that I did, this is a pre-loved vintage 20-year-old Chanel classic flap, and I purchased some products from the handbag spa, and I did a whole antibacterial cleanse, I did a hydration, and there was a moment where I freaked out because the leather, I shouldn't laugh, but I can laugh now because it's fine after restoring the shine and polish of the leather, but at some point this whole bag turned really dull, matte, like just ugly. And I freaked out and I did all this research online, and luckily I was able to find a quick trick and get the shine back. So the bag is doing very well. It's now clean and it's looking healthy and bright. And I think it has just the right amount of polish to it. And like I said in my previous video, as I use the bag, I believe that the natural oils from my hands will lubricate the leather even more, and it'll just get shinier and more beautiful over time. So yes, happy to report she is doing just fine. Yes, I'm calling my bags she from now on. But in this video, I wanted to talk about what you should look for if it's your first time purchasing a Chanel classic flap bag, whether in the boutiques or on the secondhand market and you are getting a pre-loved one. I actually had two pretty horrendous experiences. Is that fair to say? Guys, let me know if you watched my whole Chanel saga. Two pretty bad experiences at the boutiques where I purchased two different brand new Chanel classic flaps. They were in the black caviar with the silver hardware, and I had to return both of them because of different quality issues. Then I turned to the secondhand market and purchased this pre-loved, plus saved a ton of money on Fashion File. So if you missed that video as well, I'll link that down below. But I received quite a few requests asking if I would do a video focused on what to look for when you are purchasing a classic flap. If you're at the boutique, I think sometimes you feel nervous and pressured, and the SA is, standing there tapping their foot to hurry you up to make a decision. And, if you're like me and you want to be polite and courteous of their time, you might just rush yourself, which is a no-no, because I definitely regretted doing that, because both times I brought the bags home and that's when I found the quality issues. I did not discover them until I brought them home, and I just kind of basically inspected them with a fine-tooth comb, which you should do at the store. And then if you're purchasing on the secondhand market, what are you looking for when you're looking at those photos, those detailed photos? And you should always ask for detailed photos. If you're going onto a site like Fashion File, they will always have very accurate, in my opinion, very accurate, very, very good photos that are zoomed in, that are very detailed, very clean, no fuzziness. There's no issue. Like, you're not going to be wondering, am I looking at this right? I've never been surprised by the quality of a bag that I ordered from Fashion File. So with that, let me show you what I look for. I'm not a professional, but I am a very picky person when it comes to making sure I'm getting what it is that I want and getting my money's worth. So let me share with you what I look for. First, I'm going to look at the bag straight on, and I'm going to make sure that the sides are fairly symmetrical. I say fairly symmetrical because these are not machine made, right? These are all handmade, and they're going to be a little bit different here and there. And so they're not going to be like perfect precision cut with a machine. But when you look at it like this, you should see nice straight lines that are pretty even. You don't want one that has a big bulge on one side or an indent on the other. You want it to be fairly clean looking. The same with the flaps here. When you go like this, they're pretty straight. So that's what I look for first. And I've held quite a few new Chanel classic flaps in my hand that I politely rejected at the boutiques, because as soon as I looked at it, I would see that it was lopsided. And I actually purchased one that was lopsided because I thought, okay, I'm never going to find a perfect one. So let me just deal with this. But that one, when I got it home, it had actually bubbled lining all on the inside. So I had to return it. So don't compromise. I guess that's my point. Look for everything that's important to you. If the symmetry and the straight lines are not important to you, then don't fuss over it. To me, it's pretty important. Then I would look at the turn lock and make sure that it is centered. I mean, these are like all very obvious common sense things, but like I said, under the boutique lights that are not really great, they have like this harsh glare. It may be hard to see and you might inadvertently overlook something that's important. You don't want a crooked turn lock. I have seen some pre-loved bags offered on Fashion File, and no matter what angle I look at the photos, some of them do have crooked turn locks. It's mostly, yeah, I don't know. I think they were mostly on the really older bags, like the vintage bags. Maybe it was taken off and put back on. It was restored improperly. I don't know, but be careful of that as well. Then I would look at the quilting. So this bag, like I said, is 20 years old. So it's definitely been worn and worn down, and the flap is kind of pushed down. So what I would do is I would make sure that it's kind of the way it would have been if I first bought it brand new. Okay, and then you go like this, and you go kind of straight down. The quilts should line up for the most part. And then on this side, the same. Someone had said that the quilting on my bag, this bag, doesn't look straight on one side. If I hold it like this on camera, it looks all wonky. The same with this. And I noticed in that video I was holding the bag in my left hand. So just look at it straight on and make sure. Now, I do realize this side is a little bit lower here, and it's because this bag has been worn. But a brand new bag should not be like that. It should be pretty much on point. The same for the back. You want the lining to run through the pocket in the back and not have any breaks. Okay? And then the bottom does not match up with the sides, if you were curious. The bottom quilting is not going to match up. And that doesn't mean it's a fake or that there's something wrong with it or defective. Chanel just doesn't care. Doesn't care to match this up with the rest of the quilting. So that's not something to really look for. The other thing I look for is the sides. So mine, because it's a vintage, it has more creasing. Yours, if you buy it brand new, shouldn't have all this creasing, even if it's lambskin. The creasing should come from you, really, from using it. But when you hold it, it should look nicely, kind of just neat, if you know what I mean. Neat, nicely tucked in, fairly symmetrical, not like squished on one side and sticking out on the other. The same for this side. It should look pretty neat because you want the bag to be able to stand on its own. And obviously this is my bed with an ivory blanket on top. So it's going to be hard because it's very mushy. But on the floor, or actually on my shelf where I place it, it stands up perfectly. You don't want one that is going to lean forward or fall back. It may mean that it has a warped base. So you want these sides here to be pretty much neat, tidy, and symmetrical. And then the bottom should be very hard, flat, even, smooth. No bubbling, no warps. When you turn the bag this way or this way, it should be flat. It shouldn't be the flaps, I mean. So one flap should not be raised. Both flaps should not be raised. If they look like that, it's not a defect, but it just speaks to the craftsmanship, and maybe the person handling this bag had to rush it or just didn't take as great of care to make sure that the flaps lay tidy. So I'll take this out. I put this in here. Whoops. Okay, it's okay. I put the buffing cloth in the middle here to prevent the zipper pull, this one right here, from indenting into the inner flap even more than it has. Whoever owned this bag prior probably did not put a piece of felt or anything here, and therefore if she closed it up and stored it with the zipper open, it would indent here And then the same on this side. One of my subbies thought that it was the chain rubbing, and that could happen too. So you want to put something here, but my chain does not actually rub on that section. It actually rubs up here, and I don't have any wear up here. This is all from the zipper pull. Here, the trick that I learned from my subby was to put some tissue paper up here to kind of leave a little bit of a space so that the chain doesn't rub. So just a tangent, a nice little tip if you were looking for a way to prevent rubbing from the chains. I don't like when the flap has a cone. I think on the Chanel reissues that's natural. Over time, especially the aged calfskin, it turns a little bit more pointy. On the classic flaps, I like it to be a little bit more rounded. So I would be careful about putting too much tissue paper here or anything, because then it might push up the flap into a cone shape here. You guys can tell I'm really picky. Okay, so when you open up the bag, this is what I would do. I mean, literally at the boutique, or if you have the bag in your hands, I would open the zippers and just give it a, like when my husband and I were looking around New York to purchase an apartment, I literally went into every bathroom and I flushed the toilet. And I was like, I'm not buying a place that costs a crazy amount of money that doesn't flush properly, or that doesn't have bathrooms that have, strong running water. I would turn on the faucets and a good flush. And he thought I was crazy, but I literally did that to every place we saw. So I would check all the zippers. I would make sure that, by the way, why check the zippers? I'm not expecting that Chanel's going to have wonky zippers that don't open or get stuck, or, the zipper pull falls off. I've not seen that. But I have held bags where the zipper was very, very sticky and stiff. And I wanted one that's a little bit smoother. I don't want it to keep getting caught like this. So that's why I just give it a once pull and then see if it feels smooth for you. The inside, or the other side of the turn lock should have this little plate, and it has Chanel Paris on it. You see these little screws? They should always be flathead screws, never any other kind of screws. So one here and one here. I don't know. I've never seen a replica. I've never held a replica. I don't know if they pay attention to that, but that's something I would look at if you are buying from a secondhand market or eBay or somewhere that you're not 100% sure if they're trustworthy. Check every nook and cranny. So these should always be flathead screws. And then you open up the inner flap. I always check, where is it made? So mine is made in France. I have a preference for made in France bags. If you don't care, then maybe not an issue for you at all. But if you're at the store and they show you a couple of different bags, you can check to see, is it made in France or made in Italy? You can also specifically request, I'd like to see a bag that is made in France or that is made in Italy. If they have the options on hand, they can bring up, the specific type. So when you open up the inside, you want to make sure that the CCs are nice and tidy. There's no crazy bumpy, bubbly stuff happening, no peeling. This is more for the secondhand buyers. Like I said, this bag is 20 years old, and you can see the CCs on the inside are still in fantastic shape. You see very even puffiness here. I would be annoyed if it was puffy up to here and then flat for the rest. And then you have these two pockets. If you are buying pre-loved, you may not want these pockets to be overly stretched out, or maybe you do if you want to put bigger stuff in there. I don't know. But if that matters to you, take a look. You don't want the lining, the bottom of the bag, to be bubbled. If you're curious as to what that means, you can go back and look at one of my previous videos, one of the bags that I returned. I can link that down below as well, so you can find it easily. When I touched the bottom of that bag, literally there were bubbles. I could press down because there were air pockets all along the bottom and the side. It should not be like that. Doesn't matter what the essay tells you. It should be neat, laying flat and tidy. Like this. This is some creasing happening here. It's not an air bubble. And even if that was a tiny air bubble, I wouldn't freak out because, like I said, this is a 20-year-old bag. But if you buy a brand new bag or a fairly new bag and there's so much bubbling, the way I had seen on my first, or it was my second brand new Chanel Classic flap that I returned, that is a no-no. Here mine, because it is quite old. It has some creasing here from pulling open. You shouldn't see that on a new bag. I don't mind this on a pre-loved bag because it's just for me. No one's going to see that. It's not on the outside of the bag, and it's not a defect. It's just natural wear. The quilting obviously over here, under here, should also line up nicely. And if you get burgundy lining, the burgundy should be on the inside of the flap, also on the inside of this pocket here, as well as the inside of, you can't really see, but your back pocket as well. There are a few years where I think they may not have done that. Don't quote me on this, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the reissues where everything else on the inside is burgundy, but then the back pocket is not burgundy. So you might need to do some extra research on that. But for the classic flaps, the interior color of the lining should match pretty much all the interior. So the back pocket, the large compartment, and the smaller pocket here. Okay? And then let me get into the super, super, super really OCD type stuff. So let me close this up. I would also inspect the grommets, which are these holes here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 on the medium size. There are 4 on basically all of the classics, the small, the medium large, the jumbo, and the maxi. In the mini sizes for the square and the rectangular, it will just be 1 grommet on this side and 1 grommet on that side, so 2 versus the 4. Okay, what am I inspecting? I'm looking to see if the holes are punched in pretty much in the same spots on each side. So again, it's sort of like symmetry. So this one was punched right along this line here, and this one was also punched right along the line. If it was a little further out like here, and it was kind of mismatched, that would bother me, not because I'm obsessed with symmetry, although it does sound like I'm obsessed with symmetry. But if you think about it, if the grommets are not matched up pretty neatly, then what happens when you keep pulling on the chains? One side will be naturally, kind of pulling more. It might pull more on this side, or it's going to be out of balance if you have 4 holes and 1 or 2 of them are off center or off position, I should say. And if you ever saw those bags where one side of the flap is lifting but the other is not, so like instead of the flap being straight across, it's like this. Well, I would attribute that mostly to the grommets not being in the right positions, because if you keep pulling on the chain and only one side is, let's say, off, wouldn't the flap go up with it? I don't know, it just seems natural to me. And also, if the grommets are noticeably off, I think that is what contributes to the bag falling one way or the other when you place it on a hard surface. So I would not say the grommets are the most important thing to check. I think the most important thing to check is the symmetry from the front, the quilting, that it lines up, that the bottom is sturdy and flat. And if you like puffy bags, I love puffy quilting. I have come to terms with the fact that if I get a vintage like this one, it's not going to be super puffy. But if I'm getting a new bag, I would like puffy quilting. If you like a bag that is shinier or more matte, take a look at those things. That's just personal preference. Definitely check for the bubbled lining. I don't think people always think to open it up, pull out all the tissue paper. You can do that. It's okay. The essay, a nice essay will actually take it all out for you. And look at the lining to make sure there is no bubbling or folding or unusual creasing. But yeah, and then, check the chains, make sure there's no feathering, there's no thread sticking out or any fraying happening. Again, these are for the new bags. For the pre-loved ones, if you know that it's worn, it's been loved, a little bit of feathering, a little bit of a loose thread, 1 or 2 here and there, you might be able to live with if it's for the right price and everything else looks good. But yeah, after you've checked everything, then I think the least important, still important, but maybe the least important is to check the grommets. So There are some massive sirens in the background. Let me let them pass. So as I understand it, the way the grommets are placed, they're basically punched into the leather. Oh man, there's like a siren parade outside my building. Okay. So it is, I don't know if it's a machine or if it's a person that's like, you know, putting it in, but if you have a very meticulous person, they're going to measure it and line it up very nicely. And if you have someone who is rushed or maybe not as well trained or skilled, it's not going to match up as well, possibly. So for me personally, like on this side, what am I looking at? Okay, so on this side, okay, you guys are going to think I'm super crazy. I still love this bag. I love it so, so, so much. I have no problems with it. I'm just trying to use this as an example. So if you look on this side, if I wanted to make an issue of it, I could say that this grommet is like a hairline higher than the left side grommet. Do you guys see that? And yeah, it's definitely there. Like if I were to take a ruler and draw a straight line, this guy here, this grommet is a tiny bit higher than its partner. Let's see on this side. I think this side was a little bit more precise. Yeah, this to me looks very even. So it's not noticeable, but if I saw this on a brand new one and let's say I put it down and it fell over or it pulled on one side, I would ask to see a different one. If you're getting a pre-loved one, a vintage one, it's minor, and like I said, if the price is right and everything else about it you love, then I say go for it. We can't fret and fuss over a handbag all day long. But I did want to make this video because, like I said, it was requested, and I know there are a lot of first-time Chanel Classic handbag buyers, and I wanted to just share the information that I had and what I go by and share a little bit about my experience so that you can be informed and find the perfect bag for you that makes you super, super excited and happy to wear. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed already, I would love for you to join. And please let me know in the comments below if you have any other requests for specific videos or just thoughts, questions about what I shared today. Thank you. Bye-bye.